Welcome back to the Red Bull Chronicles. It's with great excitement that we welcome one of the veterans of the Chronicles couch, Mr. Ben Brown, onto the show. Ben, how's it going?
Good to be here.
You've been a busy man already in 2012, haven't you?
Yep, sure have. Just got back from 5 weeks filming in the West Coast and the South Island and made it back in one piece just, so yep.
What was the idea behind the trip?
Basically was to bring a group of mates, head into sort of the hills of New Zealand and explore the great whitewater we have here. I've paddled with these guys all over the world and always told them about the epic adventures we have down here, so I thought it was time to put my money where my mouth is and bring them down here and introduce them to my backyard.
It was a pretty international crew, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. We had guys from the States, Mexico, and then a couple of local guys, so it was a nice little mix, and it was cool to bring guys from different backgrounds and different paddling lineage and bring them into New Zealand and let them loose on our whitewater.
If you were travelling round, how many kilometres did you put under your belt in that time?
We put 8,000 on the camper van, and that was in 36 days. But of those days, it was only 9 days driving, so we definitely pumped some Ks out.
So with all those guys and all that gear, you just had one camper van?
Yeah, we had.
Really?
So there was 5 of us on the road. We had a mountain of camera gear. So that was why we had a big vehicle. We had the kayaks strapped to the roof, and then all our camera gear, all our living stuff.
How did you cope with being in such a close space with all of those smelly guys? So I'm just assuming that you're all smelly because you...
Oh, it was pretty good. All our wet kayaking gear that we had stuffed into the bathroom, that had a nice little smell that sort of drowned everything else out.
Nice.
So, no, but we were good. We actually, it's always amazing when you bring a group of guys like that together, you cram them into a small space, and I think the biggest argument you have is what to put on the radio rather than anything too serious. So,
yeah, right. And so getting from place to place, was it all drivable or did you have to, I don't know, use other means?
Yeah, I mean, the access in New Zealand is a big thing. We, probably 90% of the rivers we paddled, we actually had to fly in helicopters, which brings a whole nother aspect. You've got the remote aspect, you've got to strap the kayaks to the skids, and they're not flash helicopters, they look more like light bulbs than jet rangers. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that throws in a whole nother thing, trying to film in the middle of nowhere in these remote gorges.
Yeah, because trying to film, that's a new thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we were all self-contained, we had the same guys that were paddling in front of the cameras with the same guys that were filming the other boys behind the cameras.
We've had a look at some of the footage, and there's one shot that really stood out to me at Matariki Falls, where you've got the jib arms set up right on the edge there. I mean, that's a triumph of sort of resourcefulness, and you're saying that you have to strip down gear to get into the wilderness, but that's a phenomenal shot.
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of one of the big ideas behind the project, was obviously to go out and have some epic adventures, but it was also to do the sport justice, do New Zealand justice. So, I went in there saying to the boys, okay, if it's worth filming, we're going to film it right. So that's why we had that big gear. And, Matariki Falls is a good example because, that was towards the end of the trip. We were back on the North Island and we'd heard these sort of whispers about this waterfall, jacked across some farmer's paddock, pushed through the bushes, and there was like this 45-foot waterfall in front of us. So it was kind of what the whole project was about, just getting off the road, having a little bit of adventure, having a bit of an explore and filming and paddling what we found.
Obviously the rivers were good by the time you hit them, but just how good were they?
The rivers in New Zealand are amazing. It's a renowned whitewater destination, but the thing with them is they don't look that spectacular in terms of there's not a huge amount of waterfalls and stuff, and they're actually really dangerous as well. That New Zealand is such a young country, and there's all these loose boulders and the water flows in and over and around and under them. And that was one of the things I had to be really aware with on this trip, was bringing these guys. Obviously, they're some of the best kayakers in the world, but I felt a sense of responsibility that I had them there. And when you head into a country like New Zealand for 5 weeks, paddling the hardest whitewater in the country every day, you're putting yourself in harm's way, and there's something is going to happen. And that was something that I had to make those guys acutely aware of, that while we were in these epic environments, that we were actually in some of the most sketchiest places you can go on the planet.
I'm going to stop you there, Ben, because we've got to take a break, but there's plenty more to talk about, including the moment that this happened. Welcome back to the Chronicles. We've got Ben Brown here in the hot seat. Now, Ben, you spent 5 weeks down south on the Flow Hunters project. It didn't always go to plan though, did it?
Within the space of 4 days, we had 2 of the most sketchiest things I've ever seen happen in a river. The first one was on the second day of a descent we did of the Upper Hokitika River, which was a terrifying run. We had spent the previous day going through these boxed-in river gorges where we couldn't see what we were going to be paddling and making these must-make moves that had pretty dire consequences. And we got to the hut, had a beautiful night, got up in the morning all refreshed and fired up, and then quickly on the second morning, one of the guys that had joined us, a friend of ours, Justin, decided to fire off this big waterfall. And he hit the line perfectly and ended up getting sort of trashed at the bottom and sucked back behind the waterfall into a cave that was guarded by the actual drop, which is sort of one of the things you really try to avoid on a river, because he was in the back of this cave, completely out of sight, getting hammered by the waterfall, out of his boat, stuck. So he actually managed to find a finger crack to put his fingers in, and we just started throwing our throw bags at him and trying to fish him out, really. That's one of the worst circumstances you can get into, where you can't see the person you're trying to rescue. And we got lucky on that occasion, got a nice surge. He managed to grab a rope and actually pull himself clear of the waterfall.
He grabbed your rope though?
Grabbed my rope, yeah, and I was sort of hanging on the top, and I ended up actually falling down on my bum and trying to stop myself getting pulled into the waterfall as well. And I managed to find a little toe crack to stick my toe in and hold on, and I had Ruffer up top with me holding on. And
there's no safety, guys. It's just you guys.
Oh, it's us. That's the whole thing with kayaking.
Just all watching out for
each
other.
You got to look after each other. We carry all our safety gear, and
it's really interesting for me watching that footage, because you come on before and talked about the team, and I don't think I really got it. I saw it still as quite an individual sport, but that really starts to illustrate it. Again, on that second incident, though, where the guy gets stuck under the rock. Yeah,
I mean, that, and then, sort of, we got Justin out of that situation, and he had a bit of a nightmare trying to get out of the river, and then we thought, okay, we've got our bad situation out of the way. And then we had, this A day that we'd been looking forward to the whole trip. We had the cameras on the helicopter following us down. It was sort of the thing I'd been dreaming of, And we went in and we were trying to maximise our time. We were charging down the river. We'd had a big safety talk at the start of it and said, guys, we'll just, we've got the helicopter there, but paddle safely first, and then, we'll get as much as we can, and what will be, will be. And then we got to sort of the first major rapid, and Geordie, a local guy from Hokitika who we'd brought on to lead the trip, he knew the river better than probably anyone in the world. He ran off, turned back to us to say everything was okay, and kind of got wedged on a little rock in front of a big boulder. We all jumped, he looked pretty stable. We all jumped out of our kayaks to rush down and help him. And by the time I got down there, two of the guys were already on him, and he was pretty much head underwater. He was holding on to a rope. The guys couldn't reach him. He's wedged, flat on his kayak between these two rocks. And Jared was there just pulling the rope tight as hard as he could and bringing his head up for air, and then having to let him go to try and get out of his boat, and then pulling his head up. And then he managed to wriggle out of his boat and then just got sucked straight under this huge boulder. And at that point, that's when you think that there's no chance.
In 5 seconds, it just turns to absolute custard.
Yeah, and that's the thing with these rivers, they give you these amazing adventures, and they're beautiful and they're great fun to paddle, but you let your guard down for just a second and they'll kill you.
He turns around, everything's fine.
Yeah, he gave us the thumbs up, and he was stable, and then, in that split second, and it was kind of the weird feeling, because he popped up on the other side of this huge boulder, and obviously it's a massive relief, but you don't even know what to think. You don't even know if you're still scared that he's just died or he's alive or what's going on. There's a helicopter screaming around.
Happens,
and it's...
Do you stop, pull over, and just everyone kind of sit around going...
Yeah, well, it's kind of. We had a bit of other stuff to deal with then. He lost his kayak, and he lost his spray skirt, and he lost his paddle. So we had to get him out of there. We had to try and retrieve all the ropes and anchor points and everything that we'd had everywhere. And yeah, then we sort of had the moment to take a few breaths, gather your thoughts, and then
calm the adrenaline down.
And then still had hours and hours of really hard water to go, but it was still a cool day. Like, it was awesome to get to the end of the day and be smiling, because it could have been the worst day ever. So
you've had a bit of time now to kind of process the whole trip and look back on it. Would you say it's one of your career highlights?
Absolutely. I mean, in a lot of ways, I kind of feel like I've been building my whole career towards it. I grew up heading on New Zealand, found the sport that I love, that has then sort of become my life. I've spent the last decade travelling the world, exploring all the best whitewater on the planet, and then to take all that experience, all the skills I've learned, to bring some of the friends I've made along the way and bring them back to where it all began, is like, it's a dream come true.
Kayaking is this very different type of experience. It's really its own beast. Being here in New Zealand is the perfect place to practice what we love to do, and that's river exploration.
We're here to hunt the flow, you know, to hunt the rain, to hunt the good weather, to look for those experiences and find them in the right places.
You know, you go into these places and if you let your guard down for a second, they'll kill you.
Ben, as ever, a pleasure having you on the show and extremely enlightening.
Yeah, a real insight into your world. Now, we're staying in Southland. The rain that works so well for you didn't work so well for these guys. We're heading to Farm Jam.